Hi, everyone out there in the world of YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, stopping by, checking out the channel. My name is Jacqueline Anderson, and I have a distinguished guest today. But before I get to that introduction, let me say, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing. But if you're not new, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. Like, share, comment as usual. But back to my distinguished guest, he has roots in Louisiana. He started a new job right when the pandemic set in, so we can hear all about that, how he's faring and what he's doing. So my guest today is CPA Justin Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to see our conversation and kind of just give you some background about me.
Great. Well, thank you for saying yes and accepting the invitation to share your CPA exam journey, your story, and how you're using the credentials in your accounting career.
Okay. Yeah.
All righty, let's get started. The first question I ask every guest is, what's your name on your birth certificate?
My name is Justin Anderson on my birth certificate.
All righty. We didn't get into this before I started recording, but maybe we're long lost distant cousins.
Maybe.
All right, we have to talk more about that offline, maybe.
I know.
Okay, so where are you from?
So I'm originally from a small place called Monroe, Louisiana, which is in North Louisiana, and also Bastrop, Louisiana. They're really close in proximity. So I was born and raised in Monroe, and that's where I kind of became, started my college career actually in New Orleans, but I ended up graduating from the University of Louisiana at Monroe due to Hurricane Katrina. So I was forced back, but I'm from Monroe, Louisiana.
Oh, okay. So you had to deal with Hurricane Katrina in the midst of your college studies?
Yes. So I was at the University of University of New Orleans for my freshman year, and during my sophomore year at the start is when Hurricane Katrina happened, and that was a big mess, really. So I lost all my stuff, my apartment, everything was gone. So it kind of forced me back to Monroe, and I just finished my degree in Monroe, in the hometown.
Oh, okay. Well, we definitely got to get into how Katrina affected college and your CPA exam studies. So you left Monroe area, which I'm somewhat familiar with off I-20 because I'm from East Texas. So I drive through Monroe going home. So you went to the big city of New Orleans. Okay. So how is that then having to go back home?
Oh Lord, I felt like the worst. At the time, it felt like the absolute worst because I was trying to escape the small city to get to at least a big city, and having to come back, I was like, oh my God. So my compromise, and it turned out to be like terrible advice for myself. I stayed on campus. I don't know why I did that, and I had a scholarship, so I'd have to pay for school, but I ended up having to pay to stay on campus. That was just such a stupid move. Now thinking back on it, but it worked out.
Gotcha. Okay. So you talked a little bit about your being in college. So what was your major?
Accounting. So I did get my accounting degree. I decided really in high school. I decided in high school at an early age I wanted to be an accountant, and I never changed. That's just stuck with it.
Okay. So we got to definitely unpack that a little bit. How did you even know accounting was an option, a major, and that's what you wanted to be an actual accountant? Who
Um,
exposed you early on in high school to get on this career path?
it was probably earlier than that. So I was such a nerd growing up. So I used to watch CNBC, MSNBC, like anything that had the stock market on it, anytime I could. And somewhere, I can't even remember the guest, it's been so long ago, somebody said on the show that accounting, I liked how much money they were making, and it just looked fun. And somebody said that accounting is the language of business, and that stuck with me. So once I got to high school, I was like, oh, I'm going to be an accountant. I mean, that's what I'm doing, and that's ever since whatever age that was. So I'm probably in junior high, probably actually probably younger than that. It's probably like fifth or sixth grade when I first heard that.
That's really unusual. I would say for Black people. I'm Black. I'm gonna say well, that is pretty cool, especially if you're saying stock market, because some people may have gone the finance route versus accounting.
Right. And And so at the time when I was, like I said, fifth or sixth grade or whenever it was, I didn't completely understand. I just remember that one guest saying that like accounting is the language of business. And I know I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that that was something I needed to know. That was kind of like accounting. You need to know accounting if you're going to deal with money.
Gotcha. So you majored in accounting, your undergrad. Did you go on to graduate degree or right on to taking the CPA exam?
So it wasn't right on. So I did not go to grad school. Somewhere along the line, I think one of my professors like, hey, you're going to get your CPA license is the highest you can go within really the accounting profession. So at that time, I knew I needed 150 hours. And actually for the longest time, I had a minor in psychology. And I actually did not complete my minor because that was a class I would had it to take like a year after graduation. I was like, let's just drop the psychology. But but I had enough hours upon graduation to sit really. So I ended up sitting after. Actually, let's see, 2 years after graduation is when I started.
Okay. So what year were you licensed?
2015. So July 2015 is the date that's on my actual license.
Gotcha. Okay. We'll get into more of that. So what area of accounting do you specialize, or do you work in industry, government? What's been your
Yes.
career path so far?
And we'll get more into this, I'm sure. Specialized. So from the start, I was in not-for-profit or governmental accounting. I worked for the city of New Orleans for a number of years. And also after that, I did internal audit for a while. And after that, I got into not-for-profit. Started as the director of finance and worked my way up to becoming the CFO of a charter management organization in New Orleans. So we ran charter schools, essentially. So mostly not-for-profit accounting, but also within the last year was my first year starting my CPA firm on the side. So it's kind of trying to grow that as well. But that's what I specialize in. And also another side from that is when I was 25, I started a Liberty Tax. So I'm a Liberty Tax franchise owner. So I actually started that when I was 25. So in the midst of me doing all of this, so I say specialize in, but I've done so many things, from tax to for-profit, nonprofit, governmental. So that's kind of all over the place.
Well, that's good. You got a breadth of knowledge, and it sounds like a depth as well. You well-rounded when it comes to being a CPA. You got all the bases covered.
Yeah, I just want to figure out, whatever was next. I was just willing to try. So, but for the most part, in my day-to-day job has mostly been governmental or not-for-profit. That's kind of my specialty.
And you said you have some entrepreneurial ventures going as well. Do you still have the Liberty Tax Service going since
Yes.
you're embarking on tax season?
I know we're in the middle of tax season, so yeah, I still own Liberty Tax, and that's still in Louisiana. Interestingly enough, when I started it, I was still living in New Orleans, but my office is actually in Monroe, Louisiana, which is 4 hours away. So I've been working remotely for the last few years, but essentially during tax season, I was driving back and forth, spending 3 to 4 days a week, especially during peak season of tax season. Trying to do both. But now after a while, I kind of got a system down and really following the processes that I don't have to be there day to day. And I still remote in. So I really try to do as little amount of returns as possible. And you really get my prepares. I review some that require my attention, but for the most part, I want to treat it like a business where I train and I hire people to do that. So I really focus on growing the business and really not working on it.
Okay. And before I forget, if we get too far in the conversation, what's your state issue number from one account to another?
Oh, 27834.
Don't forget it, right?
I know that I waited so long to get it. So as soon as I came, I memorized it. For sure.
Okay. Well, if you can think back on those days when you were studying or decided to go ahead and go down the CPA, I guess, path, what finally, after, I guess, college, you said you went into studying for the CPA exam. What review course did you use?
So I used Becker primarily. When I first, this is actually, we'll kind of get into that also in my studying methods, but I used Becker and also supplemented it with Ninja questions. So I used the Ninja. If you're familiar with those, I use their multiple choice questions once I ran out of Becker questions. No, those are really helpful to me.
Okay. Did you pay out of pocket, or what factors did you use in Becker? Was it the reputation, the pass rates, or was it the price, or the company you work for may have contributed, offset the cost?
That was out of pocket. And a funny story about that. So when I first started studying, I was fresh out of college, probably, I would say probably a year after college. And I told my mom, like, hey, I want to take this test. And she's like, oh, I'll pay for you to take 2 parts. So you just pay for it. And then she paid for it. And it was a lesson. So things that you don't really pay for, you don't value as much. So she paid. I completely forgot that I scheduled the test. I really didn't study at all. And I think at that time I had like a Wiley book. Um, I completely forgot that I wasn't, I just forgot. I was like, oh, I'm gonna study. I'll take it seriously. I didn't study. So I ended up having to reschedule. And actually I didn't pass. So actually one test, I just showed up. I was like, hey, we'll figure this out. And then it was when my wife got pregnant with my first child. I was like, I need to take this seriously. So I bought Becker and I buckled down, and that's the course I stuck with.
Gotcha. Okay, so what section do you start with? Do you remember, or how many sections did you have to retake? What was it like?
Yeah, so that was interesting too. So I started with audit first, and I wish I could, if I could do it again, I would definitely do it in a different order. But I started with audit, and I passed that on the first try. Then I did BC, and I passed that on the first try.
All right, don't just stay past that. That's a big deal. Okay.
Well, that's what I thought, and I thought the same thing until I got the regulation.
And that's your
I know, and it was so crazy because I ended up getting a 74, and I was like, I got a 74, I think, 2 or 3 times in a row.
on regulation.
And on reg and FAR. So I ended up getting 74s. I think I got a 74 in FAR. So I think I took FAR twice. And I think I got maybe took a reg 3 times. But yeah, I kept getting 74s. I was like, this cannot be happening. So I lost credit for audit. And I was on a roll, when I passed those first 2, I was like, oh, I got time. And I kind of had, but really I kind of refined my study method and habits. But it worked out because the more you study, like you really have to become an expert. There's no skipping, those little random things that you think you're not going to see on the test. And if you learn, if the one thing that you don't study, that's the thing that's going to pop up and you're going to have like 5 questions on it. So I kind of refined my routine, and it worked out. So I was able to pass, even with the one I lost credit in, I was able to pass all 3, I think in a 4-month span or something like that. So from like November to, I think the last part was in April or something like that. And I had my license in July. So yeah, I think I took the last part in April, I believe. So yeah, I passed 3 parts in like 4 months after I really got serious about.
Okay, once you lost credit.
Yeah, that'll put a fire.
Down, and then you were able to pass 3 parts in record time.
I know, and it was really because I was, like I said, I had a kid, and we just had our second child, and my wife was pregnant with a third. I was like, I have to.
Oh, busy over there.
I was like, I have to get this done and knocked out because it was a lot. Because I'm really like the cook in the family, so I was trying to study. Like I said, my routine kind of got honed in, and I used to commute a long way from work, so I really got it dialed in. So I used to wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning to make sure I could study then. I would study at my lunch breaks. I would study as soon as I got home, but I would break up my study sessions to make sure I didn't spend that much time away from them so they really didn't see the effects of me studying, 4 or 5 hours a day. That's a lot.
Yeah, that is. Well, can you share your experience on being, I would say, a tax expert, having plenty of expertise in taxes, since you said you have a franchise in taxes, but struggling with regulation, that section which deals primarily with the tax code and business law. What are your thoughts thinking back on what you wish you had known? Because I think sometimes CPA candidates take it for granted if they're already working in a certain area, especially audit or maybe tax. One of those sections may be a little easier, but we hear stories over and over that be the one section that a person will struggle on.
I know, and it was. So the individual, which is what I primarily do at in Liberty Tax, that part was kind of second nature. It was really the more advanced tax method I believe was kind of held me back on the exam. But I think once I kind of dialed in and learned, you just have to learn it all really. That's kind of when it kind of took off. It all kind of clicked, I would say. But owning the franchise has been interesting. And the type of the traditional client, they come in routinely at the same 3-week period of the year. So we probably do 70-80% of our business in a 3-week period. so everyone's gonna cram in those few weeks. But it's been fun. But I think it's definitely because I was in the middle of studying for that exam when I was opening the franchise. So I hadn't actually had my license at that point in time because I was 25 when I started the Liberty Tax. But it kind of helped me, especially with the higher end clients who come typically towards the later end of the season, or they have businesses. They're a little bit more complicated from your traditional, I would say, early season filer. But definitely studying for the CPA exam helped me out in those situations.
You've been able to actually use it in the real world.
Right. You see and how to apply it and different scenarios come up. But it's been a journey and fun.
Okay. So looking back, you would have taken the same route, you think?
Yeah, I would have retaken for sure. I would have taken it in a different order. I would have started like the one they usually recommend, FARB. So I would do probably financial for our first, then audit, then reg, and then BEC. That's my preference. That way you just get the hard ones out the way. To me, audit was super easy to study for because you can do so many questions back to back. You can just kind of get the hang of it. So that was like very easy for me to kind of get the concept down. But then you move to something like BEC where, you can probably do 30 questions in 30 minutes. And audit BEC, you're taking 4 or 5 minutes per question. It just takes so long to try to work each one of them out. But I would probably take them in that order.
Gosh. Okay. And you said your mother helped you initially with scheduling the tests, and after that you were on your own.
I was on my own, so I was like, let me and that's that cost was steep. I forget how much it was at that time. Either
around that time, I know it was like between $250 and $275, probably around that time.
I think it was a few thousand.
Average $250 around in 2000, like around 2010 up until like 2015. It was around that.
Yeah, so she paid for those, and like after paying for the tests and those retests, you're like, this investment needs to pay off, and it did. It was definitely well worth it. Like you definitely see the benefits after you pass and increases. It's like an automatic. People just assume you're smarter as soon as you get your license. They just kind of just think you have all the knowledge, but it's definitely a very respected credential.
When you did obtain the credential, where were you in your career path? What job or type of job were you working in? And the reason I'm asking, did you see the immediate salary increase or promotion on that job? Or did you have
initially, no. So I was doing internal audit at that point in time. So I did business audits with the BP oil spill. So when the BP oil spill, the headquarters is in New Orleans. So I was doing internal audits on business claims. And I passed while I was there. And they were in the middle of doing, kind of renegotiating, getting me a raise. And then they put a freeze on all raises. I'm like, okay, it's time for me to, it kind of to my cue to kind of get out of here. But it worked out because I was able to, within, I would say, the next year or so, it's probably like a 30% increase overall. for my next position from the one I was at.
So were you able to use that as leverage, the negotiation tool with your next position, or?
Yeah. Yes, I already had, because they were, for sure it worked out because they were looking for a CPA specifically. Yeah, because I ended up going on to be the director of finance. They were looking for it was kind of a perfect fit. They were looking for someone who was a CPA who had either internal audit or external audit experience, and worked in not-for-profit or governmental, and that was my background. So it kind of just worked out.
Oh, so you were the perfect candidate.
I know, it was like I just walked right in. So it worked out.
Even with the salary? And the reason I'm asking, just so people who are watching the videos, or especially CPA candidates, and maybe people who are in their career, just to know what career path to take and does it really pay off regarding compensation.
Right. And initially it wasn't a huge increase, but again, I worked my way up to from starting at the director of finance and becoming the CFO once we added multiple schools. But I was able to renegotiate later on with the experience, like I said, for an increase, which also leads me to a book I would recommend. There's a book called Never Split the Difference.
Plug it, tell us about it.
Never Split the Difference. And it's all about negotiation tactics and how you can negotiate. And after really reading that, you'll definitely become, I wouldn't say expert at negotiating, but your negotiation skills will definitely increase. So I recommend that book.
You think more of us would be more comfortable? Because I think a lot of people just feel uncomfortable tooting our own horn or trying to make a case for what some of us, including myself, thinks is common knowledge. You see, I come in and I work every day. Don't you see it speaks for itself? I got to come tell you this.
And it's funny, I went in and I followed how the book kind of lays out to a T, and it works. It works. The book kind of talks about using silence and kind of as a negotiation tool, because people that they don't like silent space or dead space, so they feel inclined to talk. So you, as the person, use silence to your advantage, and it worked out. I got exactly what I was going in for, so I would highly recommend.
Okay, and what's the name of the book again?
Never Split the Difference.
Okay, we'll definitely put that in the description. I might just have to read them for myself. So with that, do you think where you are currently, the position you have, your salary is in line with industry standards in your work experience?
I would say so. It's still a governmental, like I still work for, it's a type of governmental or not-for-profit accounting. And depending on what industry you're in, you can see higher increases versus, governmental paying jobs. But I would say it's in line with industry standards.
Oh, that's good to hear. So do you think you'll continue along that path, or you have any other aspirations in using your CPA credentials?
Yeah, so like I said, I started my part-time firm about a year ago. So I've been really focused on growing that over the last year or so and gaining more clients. But I've just been working on growing that. So I'll see where it takes me. I do like my current job, my 9 to 5, I guess you could say. But also I'm an entrepreneur at spirit. So I like having control over my time and my actions. So I'll just see kind of where it goes from here.
Oh, that's good. That's great that you, again, for those out there, CPA gives you so many options and the lanes are wide open depending on your interest.
I definitely agree. It opens so many doors. And again, like you kind of said, it's so many different options and so many routes you can take within a profession. It's just so broad of the things that you can do after obtaining your license.
And you touched on where you worked in various industries and got so much experience. Did you have anyone guiding you along the way, a mentor or just someone in your family to try to help you navigate this world of accounting?
Mentor, I would say, really, I would say it was, I would say competition, but some of my peers, we all took the test around the same time. So when I was working at the city of New Orleans, a lot of my colleagues, we were all hired basically at the same time, and we all started taking the test at the same time. And we're all Black, and we had all up in getting our licenses. So it was really that we kind of pushed each other, I would say.
That's unusual. How
It
did
is.
that come about? That you just landed with a group of people that were accountants interested in being CPAs? Because usually we are few and far between. We may work in accounting, but having a CPA interest and becoming a CPA,
I know.
that's unusual. So talk about that.
They really did a great job of hiring. That was like a dream team, really, looking back on it. We were just all ambitious. I think we probably just started talking about it probably during lunch,
Mhm.
and we just started taking the test, and we kind of just pushed each other. One would pass its section. We either were taking the same sections at the same time. So I think that camaraderie of pushing each other during the study process kind of pushed us towards the finish line. Um,
Somewhat of a friendly competition and a circle of folks in the same, I guess, tough
right.
battle. You in it together.
Right, we're definitely in it together. So once we pass, we see each other. We're just so happy for each other once we pass. So and it was just motivation. One pass, it just kind of motivated you to also do the same. So I would say that's what was my main motivation. And I did have a mentor also at that same position. She kind of, I would say, showed me the ropes. She wasn't a CPA, but if
Mm.
she wanted to, she could pass the test no problem. She had worked in accounting for who knows at that point, 40 plus years. And she really showed me everything that I use today.
Oh, that was fantastic. You had a group of people around you and then someone cheerleader and guiding you.
Right,
You
right.
need that.
I know now after just talking about it, I guess I've been so fortunate to be in a situation like that that I really had that nurturing at that point in my time.
Right, because I'm not quite sure if you had other classmates or people you run into, colleagues who've been attempting to or thinking about it, but just never finished it or saw it through.
Right, because it's for sure it's hard. Like it's doable, but I think it's difficult. And I think a lot of people either get scared away, or they think it's too hard, or they hear how hard it is. But my thing on it's hard, and you just need to do it hard. It just needs to. You have to really buckle down and do it. Um, and of course, I think it's easier at certain points in time, especially for sure not having kids. Um, if I would have probably started and actually buckled down at the beginning, it would have been much easier to do it from once we are 2 and 3 kids in, because you're limited on time. But
Mhm.
at the same time, in my case, that would push me to get done is having kids. So
Having those responsibilities motivated you to stay on track, stay focused, all right?
for sure, kids will motivate you.
Right. And you mentioned early on, we were talking about your major and you had minored in psychology, but so you had accumulated enough hours. So do you plan on getting a, I guess, master's degree in accounting? Do you think it's needed or would it be worthwhile considering where you are in your career, or is CPA enough?
Yeah. So from my experience so far, it's been enough. It was really they were looking for either or. You either had a master's degree or you had your CPA. If you had both, that'd be great. Um, and I've actually been toying with the idea of going to law school. So I've been actually preparing and studying for the LSAT for the
Okay.
last little about while. So that's kind of my next. I don't know. I feel like I'm always jumping into something else. I'm always having it.
Challenge. You need a challenge, huh?
I'm always looking for a challenge. But so at that point in time, I guess that'll be my return to school. But right now, my CPA's been enough.
Maintaining those continuing education hours is not enough. You want to go actually back to the classroom. You truly have not had enough of this.
I know. Well, it took a while because I know once I got done with the exam, I'm like, oh, I'm definitely. I don't care about getting a master's degree. I've put in. At that point, I'm studying 30 hours a week. You're like, I'm not doing school again. But now I think it's been so many years has passed, so I think I have the appetite again to do it.
Then yeah, you can keep all the money, everybody. Lord, in the account. You don't have to outsource anything. You got it all.
Lay, one can hope.
Well, that's a good thing. Well, considering you had a vast career so far, and like you said, broad knowledge, what have you had any issues since considering this climate with what's going on racially in America, have you experienced any discrimination, or is the hot topic diversity and inclusion where you work? What are your thoughts about any of that, especially because Black people are underrepresented in the accounting profession, especially having CPA as a credential?
Yeah, so of course I would say in New Orleans is primarily, I would say, an African American city. So I was fortunate enough to the majority of my colleagues were African American. Where I am now is majority African American. So I haven't been in a situation where I've had to feel discrimination. So I guess I'm lucky in that standpoint. Not to say that it can't happen though, to me for sure. But I've been blessed so far that I haven't had to encounter any racial discrimination based on, at the workplace.
Oh yeah, oh my goodness, you are totally blessed. Praise the Lord.
I know, yeah, because I've heard stories, of getting passed over for, typical office politics, and I just have not had to deal with any of that. So I'm lucky.
Okay, question I've started to ask people: when did you meet your first Black CPA? Do you remember, or are you it? Sometimes the answer, I'm that person.
I'm thinking,
Besides, I know you said you had colleagues, but before, well, y'all were studying together, and I'm assuming probably got licensed at the same time.
Right. So actually, and I would say she was another mentor. So one of my early managers, she was a CPA, and we used to get part of our audit was outsourced. They had a DBE inclusion, so they did the single audit as a part of our larger audit, and that was really the Black CPA firm. Basically, if you're a CPA, and I would almost say Louisiana, you worked at, it's called Bruno and Turvalon, and actually I almost went to do auditing for Bruno and Turvalon, but I got the position doing internal audit. And one of my other friends who I was studying with, he went on to do auditing for this firm. They're like the Black firm, so everybody who's Black in a CPA, they all want the Bruno and Turvalon. It's the oldest Black CPA firm in Louisiana, if I recall. But
it's still
yeah, they're still around.
Haven't merged or through an acquisition been bought out?
No, they have not been bought out. They're still hanging on. And he's still over there. So they've been thriving. I'm not sure what year they started, but they've been around forever.
Oh, that's great. But you said you declined to work with them. You got another offer.
Yeah, because I had a connection. One of my frat brothers, he was friends with and he was a CPA. So one of the sons of the owner, he was like the recruiter of employment. So but yeah, I got the position doing an internal audit.
Yeah, you are like a unicorn then. Yeah, this is unusual. Everybody out there, I don't know. This is great to hear these stories. It gives us inspiration, but I don't know how realistic it is. But if you got the Lord over you, covering you, anything could happen. So I don't want to discourage anybody, but this is not typical, I will say. Yeah, connections. No. So, but speak to how important it is having those connections. You mentioned the fraternity and friends and those relationships.
Yeah, I would say try to connect with, and I'm not necessarily do a lot of networking or socializing, but it was just somebody I knew. But I would definitely encourage people to try to get out and meet other CPAs, getting involved in different groups around your area, because those things really go a long way. I know plenty of my colleagues they've got positions, great positions. They've moved all from just a connection they made. Just say, for example, NABA, for instance. I know a lot of people active in that, and they've gone on to do great things.
Were you active in NABA in college or since graduating? Or you with the organization?
So I have not been active. So once in New Orleans, they were actually just on the verge of rechartering it's basically bringing back that chapter. Okay. So I did go to the initial I guess kickoff meetings, but I ended up moving, so I didn't get active. But I'm definitely, now that I'm in Atlanta, I'm thinking about joining to kind of get active locally.
Oh, well, that's good. So you think it's valuable? It would be to have been.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. Again, I know people who were active in the chapter, especially in New Orleans, and several of them have gone on to either work. I know one particular, she got an offer moving from New Orleans to work for Microsoft. I think she has a great position, and I've heard that from a few people that all the jobs they got was from connection they had within NABA. So I think it's probably beneficial.
Gosh, okay. And talking to other CPAs, and you've kind of touched on it, saying how some accountants or other people who can work in the field who but are not CPAs may
Mhm.
not stay on track or go down this journey of becoming a CPA because they're either scared or don't have confidence. What is your advice or thoughts on how do we continue to encourage other Black people specifically to pursue this designation? What can we do as CPAs who've been
I
there and can
really,
sympathize and empathize?
right. I think just telling our story, because I know to just get more. I don't even think at that point in time I didn't even know what a CPA was. Especially, I knew I wanted to be an accountant, but I had never even really heard of a CPA, especially in high school. I didn't even know what that was. Even to this day, you have to do a lot of educating people on what a CPA is. Of course, you tell them you're an accountant, they immediately think you do taxes. In this case, I do taxes, but that's not the case for the majority of CPAs. So really trying to educate them on what a CPA is and how that can benefit them and when they need one. Um, and also for people who are already in accounting, it's really not as scary as I think, people make it out to be. Again, it is difficult, but it's so rewarding if you stick with it. I think the test is more a test of endurance and your will to try to pass versus as technical, I think, as people assume it to be.
Gotcha, okay. And I don't know if you followed the statistics or heard or read, but it says that there are like over 650,000 CPAs in the US, yet Black people only represent about 5,000, which is less than 1%.
It's crazy. It's still so crazy to me. It's like mind blowing that less than 1%, and the fact that I'm in that number and I know so many other Black ones. Um, it just seems crazy, but we definitely have to spread like the message because I think it's such a needed field in finance in general. I think it's really needed in our community and really trying to spread the message of, again, what a CPA is. So more people be inclined to take it up because I think it's almost endless. And I know a lot of, some people have aspirations of being a CEO or a CFO. And a lot of times that's really like the pathway. A lot of times you go from being a CFO, that's kind of like the CEO track. A lot of times in some companies, they trust the person with the finances can lead the company. It's not true in all cases, but I know that's a path you can take.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, you had a great story, interesting story. Started when you're talking about Hurricane Katrina. Was there anything in there that could have thrown you off track or did just for briefly? Because I know you said you sound like you're pretty focused and ambitious, but was there anything throughout your career so far that could have, I guess, deterred you?
Yeah, I would say kids. Again, those kids that like that kind of threw that definitely made it more difficult trying to balance the two. Because there is a time commitment you have to put in to make sure you study adequately to pass. So, having kids could have been something that threw me off, and I just used that as motivation. Um, Also, my business, I could have, been content. I was like, okay, I got a place, I could just do this. Um, but again, I am pretty like I'm stubborn, so I had a mindset that I wanted to be a CPA. So I was going to do really whatever to make sure until I was done.
Sounds like you're very ambitious.
I guess so, and I'm always so busy. I don't even until I'm telling stories like this. I don't even have the time to think about what I'm doing because I'm always just doing it. And it's not until it actually comes out of my mouth that like, oh, I have done a lot.
Hey, you've accomplished a lot. Sure stand.
But it doesn't seem like it.
If you don't mind sharing, how old were you when you were licensed, or how old you are now?
When I got my license, let me think. What year was that? So yeah, I think it was like 27 or
Okay.
so. So I'm 34 now. Yeah, I was like 27 and 28. I think I was probably by the turn, around that age. But yeah, I'm 34 now. But yeah,
So
it's
you've
been
done a
crazy.
lot. You accomplished a lot. You're a few years, short years after graduating. So it can be done. You are an example if you buckle down and stay focused.
Yeah, and I think because I actually, I'm not sure the statistics on when people normally take the exam, but for sure, I think it's probably easier if you take it right after school. You're not trying to relearn a lot of the same topics. You just, it's fresher on your mind, and you can just kind of knock it out before you get too involved with, you know, either marriage or life or all the other responsibilities that come with that. It's probably, I would say, just try to knock it out in the beginning.
Gotcha. Well, one final question, which is a question I wrap up every interview. What does having CPA behind your name mean to you?
Um, it's still I can recall exactly the emotions of seeing that final pass score, especially after seeing those other 74s. It's like still to date to me the most accomplished thing I've done. It was the hardest I've worked for anything. It was for sure at this point the most rewarding, and it just made it all worth it at the end of the day. After spending, again, you're spending 20 to 30 hours every week. And at that point, it took me, after all those retakes, probably 2.5 years from the first test to the last. And having no life, you're really just kind of to yourself trying to study, but it made it so much worth it. And just seeing the look on my kid's face and my wife, everyone just so happy. So to this day, it's still the most rewarding thing that I've done and just totally worth it.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Great story. Great interview. So my guest today is Mr. Justin Anderson. He survived Hurricane Katrina, relocating, and in such a short time frame, he's become a CPA, has his own tax franchise, has a wealth of knowledge and experience under his belt. He shows you can do it and have it all. Just stick with it, stay focused.
Right.
So thank you for sitting down and sharing your story and doing this interview. I really appreciate it. Again, Mr. Anderson, maybe
Thank you.
long distance
Thank
cousin there.
you.
And for
Maybe.
everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed the interview. Watch the full video, share it, like, comment. And if you're not a subscriber, make sure you subscribe and tune in, check back and see who else has been featured on our channel. And remember who you are, who's you are, and there's no time like the present. And I'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.